Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Abez Show with me, your host, Abe. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Sami. Hi, Sami.
Hi, Abe. How are you doing? Thanks, man, for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Sami, please tell my audience who Sami is and what do you do?
My name is Sami Tamawi. I'm Egyptian. I live here in the UAE. I work currently as the CTO of Track Tactics, a startup based in Ireland. And I also do CTO as a service, which is kind of a new level of technical consultancies that is scattered specifically to help entrepreneurs building their technical product. My background, I studied computer engineering. I worked first as Android developer and then from Android development to senior Android developer. And then I started to move into the management, the technical management, the leadership. Co-founder in Insido, which is a startup here based in Dubai. Brand Rebler as well, co-founded it and worked there as a CTO. Then I joined Dubizzle here in the UAE, worked with them for a few years. And now I'm with Trap Tactics and I'm doing the CTO of the service, both of them.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. It's very, I would say, very interesting career, especially, you've worked with a couple of really cool startups here and there. I know we never crossed paths, me and you and Dubizzle, but I know how the culture was, and I think Dubizzle, the things that we've done and the things that they've experimented in was always exceptional in my opinion, and always did some great things. So okay, so tell me, Sami, the big question right now. Any startup founder in the technology field, not a technical founder, the big question, do I hire an agency or do I hire internally? Please answer that $1 million question.
I think if there is no straightforward answer for this, and it comes down always to the context. There is the fact that you have money versus you trying to be lean, it makes big difference. The fact that you're also very confident about your idea and you have and you already validated it or it's validated in the market play also a big factor in this. I give you an example. So if I'm starting an idea here, it's something new, nobody have created, and I'm working on my own, self-funding it, then it's make more sense not to hire full-time people, because in this situation you kind of hiring is first of all it's a mission to find the right talent, which is gonna waste a lot of time for you at the beginning. Plus also it's a long-term commitment, and this team have like not only have to be paid on regularly, but also they need to have a career path, they need to grow within the company, they need to be fully utilized, and also feel that they are learning and growing. Otherwise, they will leave the company. So it's a lot of commitment to deal with at the beginning when hiring a team. Uh, and this is not really advised at the beginning if you're not really confident about your idea. If you're not confident about your idea, exploring something new or working on a project that is slightly high risk, then it's always better to go for an agency because it's a short-term commitment. They have already the skill set. If it worked, amazing. Then you can always make the transition and hiring people full-time in-house. If it didn't work, your loss definitely is way less than it would have been if you went to the other direction, which is hiring full-time people. So that's one approach. I always like advice for young entrepreneurs or who are just starting their first product, or even sometime if they are starting their second startup next to the first one that is already running. I always advise, to be honest, to start to explore agencies first. So even if you have the in-house team, it's also it's a lot of effort and a lot of hassle to disturb the flow and the cadences that is already there in place that the team have to work on your first startup. So it's good explore on the side, and if once you have the confidence and once you know your plans financially, then you can make bigger decisions such as hiring people in-house.
You've mentioned a couple of things, and I've built a couple of companies, and technology. I'm not a tech person at all, but I now can speak a bit of tech because I've learned over the years, right? But what you say makes a lot of sense, and and there's something else that I want to touch on, and I think a lot of founders, they have an idea what they want to build, but they don't have the roadmap, and that's why that one person that they're going to hire or two people might not fulfill what people want to build. And this is where an agency can come in who has different skill sets, They could say, we this has to have a security angle. This, you need more back end. You want a couple of web developers, like depending on what you're looking for, and then they would come up with a solution. Yes, if you break it down, you say, okay, maybe I can hire all these separately. But you said something very crucial, is efficiency and making sure that the tech team is busy. The worst thing is when the tech team doesn't know what they're building and they're sitting down waiting for instructions. You know what I mean? Because that is definitely, tech talent is usually not a cheap talent to keep on board, and they have to stay motivated because you know they move on their own, right? So they find they want to stay busy. They want to keep using their heads and brains. So this is something that's very important. And for me, my answer was, if it's something innovative, I always have to have a co-founder that's technical. But if I don't have that, I'll always go with the agency until we found out what we need to build and what's the tweaks and what needs to happen there. We go through the whole ideation, and then we go through building the actual thing. And that is a process that you need more than one brain, in my opinion.
I think I also want to add a comment on the last sentence you said, which is I either have a co-founder, a technical co-founder, or go for an agency. Like I think if you have the perfect technical co-founder who knows how to communicate with you on board and buying into the idea, and also know how to build up a team and scale everything and like taking care of everything, replacing it by with an agency might by max only fulfill 70% of what this co-founder could do. And the reason why here is there's always going to be conflict of interest, because the more work you give this agency, the more money they will get out of you. But on the other hand, your co-founder would not want to give themselves more work. So they will always think of the most effective way to build things so they can achieve more within the same quarter, within the same time frame. So there will always be this, and this is the only downside that founders need to take care of at the beginning when they work with the agencies, because unfortunately, a lot of the agencies that I've experienced and worked with or helped some of the clients with, anything you tell them anything I want to build, regardless if they know it, they don't know it, they understand. Even some of them, they don't even understand the requirement. They never explored it, they never use the tech stack. They will tell you, yes, I'm gonna do it for you, and then you have to deal with the consequences later. Let's say they deliver buggy product or they deliver late. It does happen a lot. So you need to really be careful in this. That's why if it's challenging for you to find the technical co-founder, or you're not blessed enough to have somebody in your network or in a network of your network, then I think it's always advisable to have somebody as a third party to be the person that out of this conflict of interest, to be the judge sometimes, to validate what you need to do. Is it really worth it or no? And do we need to build it in this way or no? Because building any technical feature you can do it in a million ways. And there is a very dirty way, quick, and there is a very well engineered way. But it's all about what do you need. So you need really somebody who really find the right balance. So you don't have to over engineer things, because it comes down with the cost. And also you don't have to build things in a poor quality way that also come down on a short-term impact or consequences.
Yeah, agreed. And like, maybe this is from my side, and this is something that I've experienced, is a lot of times people, in tech especially, people keep saying that you need to build quick, fast. You know what I mean? And from my personal experience, from the couple of startups that I've had in technology, we always built something, and then literally a year later we threw it out and built something else. On two levels, it's more scalable, and from all the lessons learned, you know what I mean. And that's in my opinion, again from my experience, the logical way to do things, because a lot of people overthink, especially non-technical founders, especially founders that come from very big corporates or consulting agencies. They think it has to be done right from the first time. How many times have you thought of re-engineering the app? You know what I mean? Like, I remember that my days at Dubizzle or my days at Akhtabut or any of those, a lot of times we had to give up halfway through and say, you know what, let's build another one. You know what I mean? So and it's something that is very common in every technology company. And also keep in mind, more tech abilities and more tech tools are coming out that what we can do today is not what we could do 2 years ago. So the tools themselves changed.
Yeah, that's usually, I think this is usually the case with startups, because startups, like, you have this pressure that you have limited amount of money or resources that you want to kind of make it before you run out of them. So you want to really move fast, so you don't have much time of exploring and testing. So you kind of, you try to make some educated guesses and to build the right thing, but you have to move fast. But also you don't have enough historical data to validate your hypothesis. While on a bigger scale companies, something like the big corporate companies, you usually have more confidence, you know, the direction, or at least you have solid idea on the business model that you're going to follow. And here you try to also still move fast, but instead of moving fast, you start to experiment fast, in my opinion. So you experiment fast, while when you assure yourself that what you've experimented is valid, then you start to build it slow. Because corporates, I think they build for scale, they build for, let's say, a huge amount of users, or they build for the future for 5 or 10 years. So it's important also to pay attention to the details, to the infrastructure, the scalability, the maintainability, writing tests, and all this kind of, you know, technical auxiliary work that has to be done around every single feature. With a startup, it's always like build fast, which is valid. But also, like, as the earliest you start to incorporate data into your decisions, the more confident decisions that you will start to be taking.
Agreed, 100%. And you know what? You said it yourself. It's people need to make decisions. I think that's
Yeah.
the problem with, especially when people, first time founders have this problem. They're like, uh, they even go down to like even language. Should we do this language or this? And I'm like, guys, you're not going to do the work yourself. Whoever you pick, if they can build it in whatever language, let them build it for you. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of it is just, I think, as you said, I think knowledge. People do not know better. They can just say, "Hey, look, I built it on Ruby or I built it on Python," or what I mean. Like, and what does that really mean to an average founder? Nothing. But for a tech guy, they're like, okay, I'll worry about security or I'll worry about whatever that language is made out of. So, which brings me back to my next point. So now, let's say I want to start something. What do I look for to hire a CTO? Like, what would you look for to hire a CTO?
Uh, I think one of the most important things that founders need to take care of, and when they hire a CTO or they found CTO, is the compatibility. Because the problem here is, when founders don't have much knowledge about the technical black box that they are dealing with, then everything is being said to them, it's going to sound like Chinese. And this is not a problem. The problem here comes down later, when you start to get used to ignore all the details of your product. Because let's say you completely trust this person, or maybe like you just don't bother, or you know that you won't understand, or make you feel insecure. There is a million reasons why you might be doing this. Later on, this always backfire and impact the motivation of the CTOs. I've seen this myself, because after some time, you really, like, CTOs comes and they want to come kind of like, I'm talking about small on a startup. You want to take pride of what they have done. They want to, they sometimes they need help in just taking the decision. There are two different paths, and the details here is what matter. So when you start to, as a CTO, get, okay, no, it's okay, just tell me the result. So is it working or not working? Like, you decide. Then you're gonna, like, you will feel like you are on your own, and then it impacts the motivation. And also, as a founder, you start to have less empathy towards what's happening, because you're not getting into the details enough for you to know that, yes, it's too challenging to get it right. And you're just dealing, guys, you said you're gonna do it, why you didn't do it? You start to see things from very high level, and then you will start to have less empathy towards your team, and as a result, like the relationship definitely might get impacted. So have found a CTO who is able to explain to you the deep, complex technical concept in a very simple terms, which is doable. It is not rocket science. A lot of people can do it. This is a must, especially for people who really want to build a really successful product. This is really a critical point, from my opinion. Another thing also, you want to make sure that like you stay away from the CTO who is extremely overly passionate about building amazing engineered product. And I will tell you why this, because sometimes just there are a lot of engineers who love to build and use the latest technology, regardless what's happening in the business perspective. So a new programming language came, he's excited about learning something new, and then he will try to convince you, let's use this new programming language. And it's a big decision. And if you're using a programming language that is immature, you're not going to find community support. When you try to hire, you find it very challenging for this. So you want to make sure that the person that you are choosing have an element of understanding of what does it mean to take business decisions. What is, because at the end of the day, everything comes down to money, right? What you spend and hopefully what you will get eventually. So if the person that you're dealing with does not understand this or does not want to have this kind of level of conversation, then it's going to be very challenging for you, and you might be paying a lot of the price that you won't know that you paid until later on when things backfire, or you will be in a problem and you might not even know back then. It's to summarize, I think you need somebody who is able to explain to you the technical concept into very simple business. Second, you need somebody who's not overly passionate about building tech for the sake of it. You need somebody who have the right balance between the business and tech. And third, have understanding of what does it mean to manage people, how to communicate with people, how to motivate your team. So I think these three factors are very key, important factors to find the right CTO that can help you in your journey.
Amazing, amazing. And I want to add a fourth one, which you mentioned, which is culture fit. They need to culture. They need to fit the culture. You know, you walk in. I'll give you a personal story. So, I once upon a time I worked for a telecom engineer. I'm not going to say the name, and they outsourced obviously globally their tech. You know, it was in the U.S., it was in India, it was in Philippines, it was everywhere in the world, right? And you know, going from that kind of environment where people came in a suit, even, and they were like, you know, they were either network engineers, they were software developers, they were all kinds of application developers and stuff like that, to going into the full startup culture, like, you know, you mentioned you worked at Dubizzle, I worked at Dubizzle, the whole contrast, it that the person who's been used to that environment in a telco cannot work in that the startup-y feel environment, and vice versa. I think culture plays a very, very, very big part of this. And you know, like I always keep saying, yeah, I'm quoting one of the many leaders, maybe even Charles Schwab's, if I can remember. You know, culture does eat strategy for breakfast. So let me ask you this other question in one tech sense. So what's the difference between the chief product officer and a chief technical officer?
The chief technical officer is, from its name, it's mainly focused, the role itself is mainly focused on building the technical aspect of the product. Chief product officer, it's the direction of the product. Building, so basically what the product should do is the chief product officer, how the product should function to achieve what you want the product to do is the technical officer. But a lot of the time in the startups, you find the chief technology officer is taking care of the product as well. So like they decide you have, usually you have a skinny team model, one developer back end, one front end, one designer maybe, and they usually do the project management stuff, and then they take the decision collaboratively. And then once as the product grow, then you start to see the demand of taking more informative decision, data driven decision, and here comes the product person. If the company is lucky enough, then usually I think at the beginning the CEO act a lot as the product person, because they try to direct the product owner, let's guys build this feature, so this competitor is doing this, let's do it this way, and so on. But in medium sized to big companies, they do the completely different things. So the product, they usually look at historical data, what is it, they do market analysis, they try to validate the ideas of the features or the changes that they need to do in the product, and come with specs, as you said. And then the technical team start to look at it from the technical perspective, how we will build it, do we need to change in the future, and try to squeeze the vision of the product person to understand how do they see this feature 2 years from now, because it make big difference of how am I going to implement it right now. So I can implement it in a way that makes it easy for me to change in the future, or just do it exactly as you said, and then later on when you want to make a change, I have to re-implement it again. So these kind of decisions, and all the auxiliary and supplementary work that need to be done around it, like performance. So product person not gonna tell you about the performance usually. So this is something that you need to figure out. How can you make the response fast? How you to secure the product? What aspect to take care of? How to test it? How to release fast? All of this comes under the umbrella of the chief technology officer. And then everything product related, direction of the product, how to use it. And usually they work closely also with the designers. All of this comes under the product, but they usually work very closely together.
I always think the product guy is the guy who milks the journey to make sure that they make as much money as possible, while the technical guy is, I see it as like the technical guy building the street, and the product guy is the guy lining up the street and building
Yeah.
the nice scenery. Like they're together, and they need to be forced. And you know what? And both of them need to be very business focused, because they're the ones that are really driving the product. From that side. So I'm going to ask you a question that is a bit out of this topic. And I ask every one of my guests to do that. Which superhero would you pick to be you as Sami? Or if you had the choice of a superpower, what would that be? Tell me. I know it's a different kind of question.
It is a weird question. I think uh, I'm not really into superheroes because I'm really very realistic person, and even the sci-fi movies and anything that I like, oh, he flies, okay, I'm off. Change the movie. I would say the most realistic superhero that I found was, in my opinion, I think Iron Man, because he's a human being at the end of the day, but he uses technology to start to kind of empower himself with these tools. So I think this is my kind of superhero that I would really, because it looks realistic, it's science based, research based, a lot of try and error, and this is how it actually works in life. And in an Iron Man direction is doable, and I think it's already the world is getting towards it very soon. When it's come to all the like flying right now, we see people flying around with the air jets. You see, the artificial soldier and all this kind of stuff. So that's a super. What would be the superpower that I would love to have? I think light speed reading. If I have this power, I think I'm I'm done. Because it would
Nice.
allow me definitely to read a lot of these books.
I could tell, and I've read a lot of these books as well. So, what is your favorite book to read?
I would say one of my favorite books is The Compound Effect. I'm not sure if you heard about this book or not, but The Compound Effect is it's a very interesting book. It's a medium size, but I think the concept of it, when you really get it right, you will realize the value of every single small action and move and improvement that you take either on yourself, on the product that you're trying to build, or investing in a team relationship or building a culture around, and how they can later on reward back to you in a very exponential way. And this is the whole concept. Like it starts first by simplifying it and explaining, how does it work in the interest in the markets. Let's say you have 10% interest, second year 10% of the 110%, and so and so and so. After a few years, you have like it could potentially double. And this is the same thing with everything. And the reason why I found it very interesting and one of my favorite books is because a lot of the time when you when you're not that motivated, let's say because you had a bad day, you're down, and then you start to undervalue or underestimate the value that you might get from something small.
I actually haven't read, but I will definitely check it out. I am looking for a good book to read. I have a couple of good books on my plate to read, but definitely it sounds like something that I would enjoy. In saying that, I want to thank you very much for coming on to the show. I think it was great to pick your brains on, especially that big, honestly, dilemma of CTO versus agency versus how to hire a CTO and what do they do and stuff like that. Thank you very much, Sami. And hopefully I would see you soon. In saying that, we do have a hashtag that I want everybody to follow. It's hashtag Real Talk No Nonsense. Until next time, thank you very much. Thank you, Sami.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you.